Hello, Internet.
Hello, Internet. We're going to wait a couple minutes to see who else might show up in this live broadcast. I'll introduce us now, and then again, probably in about 3 or 4 minutes, as other people start to show up. So I'm Eric Klopfer, the professor for 11127X on edX, and you are?
I'm Jason Haas. I'm TA for 11127X on edX.
And we'll be doing a Hangout on air, doing some reviews of some of the prototypes we've seen so far in the course in just a few minutes.
Very fun.
And in the background, you can see some art from my daughter.
Dog. Other dog.
And Pizza Man.
Cat.
She'd be so proud.
All right.
And now I'm going to do some juggling. Like from
They haven't necessarily seen one.
No, I did. For those of you that have not seen 11132, one of the fall courses, not live on air, but I did do some juggling in one of the videos.
Is there a space where we should be seeing chat?
There's a Q&A section. We can only see that or our links.
I
not
see.
Both.
Should probably keep those open until we're ready for
Okay.
this.
We have a tradition at MIT that we always start our classes a few minutes late, so we will do that because I only see 2 viewers online right now.
I assume that people we know. Oh, there's 11.
11 viewers.
11 viewers.
We're going up quickly. Well, 13.
This is starting to feel like a telethon.
The next caller can win a free tote bag.
Yeah.
Next person to log in, free tote bag. Next person, number 14, looking for you.
edX is only
21 viewers.
It's only an educational experience because of participants like you. And support from the Annie E. Casey Foundation.
All right, we're up to 24 people. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Welcome, everybody. 33 people online now. Does really feel.
Yeah. Just
We have
numbers
a
go up.
match right now. For every viewer we get, we will have a matching viewer
Yeah, exactly.
from
Our staff.
from our staff.
We will make them stop their work.
I was going to go with the Joan Kroc.
No.
Yep.
Question.
New thingy with Hangout looks like. Can we log out to re-log in? And this one says new thingy with Hangout looks like need to select. I don't know what that means.
Click select and see what
Click
happens.
select. Okay. New thingy with Hangout looks like need to select. Mandy Honeyman.
Don't know what that means, Mandy.
Unfortunately, we don't know what that means.
We did click select though, and
Looks like need to select.
we're answering it in a fashion. Okay, yes, hit done.
I'm going to hit done with that. If you want to re-ask that question, we're happy to try to answer that. Can we log out to re-log in? I think the link that you use should continue to work. It's not a one-time link, so
Yeah.
you should be able to. I'm answering this question right now. Which, as far as I know, if you log out, you can log back in again with that same link.
Let us know if it works out, John Bork.
All right, we have almost 50 people online. We're in about another minute. We'll start the formal part of our broadcast and make sure everybody has a chance to log in. You have to select QA. Shay Rossi saying you have to select QA.
We have selected QA. I'll be right back.
We're going to just basically step out for a second here to see what it looks like from your perspective. You do if you're just logging in, you should see oops. You should see a little tiled menu of 9 tiles that should give you access to the Q&A and the showcase. Those are the 2 things that you have available. And I think maybe people are saying that if you want to see the Q&A section, you select the little grid at the top, then you should be able to get a list of the apps that we have that are on the side. Showcase and QA are the two things that we have available to us today, and so you can click on QA and see the questions and answers here, or you can click Showcase, which is where we'll be sending you some of the links to the projects that we are reviewing. So here we go. We've selected that one. So we have to select QA to see that. You can get it from the set of cubes at the top there. Those little tiles, which give you access to all the apps on the left-hand side. The logout to relog in question. The logout to relog in question was a game. Wanted to win the free gift. I see. So John Bork wanted to get the free gift, the free tote bag for being the 100th participant within this. Here's some other people sort of giving that just some feedback on how to get into here. To see the Q&A section or the showcase, you can select the grid at the top again and select Q&A rather than showcase. So everybody should have a way to have access to that. So, there are people asking whether they won, and you'll know if you won.
Yeah, that tote bag is.
First, I wasn't seeing you. I had to log out to restart. I think we're good. We are not actually typing any answers. We're not typing any answers. We are simply looking at the questions, so you can see which question that we're talking about as we talk about it if you're in the Q&A tab.
Yeah.
And thank Shay for giving us that feedback in terms of how to let people know where they can go to get to the Q&A section and the showcase. We will be actually heading over to the showcase right now, which is where we will be posting links to the different projects as we talk about it. But again, I'll introduce us. So I'm Eric Hopfer, the professor for this course, 11127X. And this here is...
I'm Jason Haas, I'm a graduate student here and the TA for 11127XX.
We are also the team that does the live local version of 11127 on campus right now, which is running in parallel to this course. So we will be toggling ourselves back and forth between the showcase and Q&A to see if you have questions. The format for today will be we did solicit volunteers who would be interested in having their projects discussed during this Hangout on Air, and we got a bunch of those, and we selected some for today. Based not because these are the best of the ones of the people who submitted things, but because we thought they represented a nice diverse array of where they were in the process of paper prototyping versus digital prototyping, the kinds of audiences they addressed, the kinds of game dynamics that they had integrated. So this provides a nice overview of the different kinds of things that are going on here. I'll make another note that some of these actually are more advanced in terms of where they are. Some of those people have been working on these projects already. They may have started those in 11132 or 11126 in the fall, or people who have more advanced digital skills. So you shouldn't feel like if you're still sort of sketching things on paper, bringing your ideas forward, that you're behind. You will see some of the ideas like that as well, but we'll be starting out with some of the digital ones. But those are just some people who are further along, and it's a great opportunity to learn from those projects. Let me add to that.
Yep.
All right. So we're going to go over to the first item here, and I'm now showing the first item, which is ClickOps, a math game. ClickOps, a math game for training the basic 4 operations. You should be able to click on that. Note that you'll have to be logged into edX and the forums. So the first time you click on this link, if you're not already logged into edX, you will get to the main edX page. You'll need to log in, and then you'll need to click in that log into forums. Then you have to click this link again, and that will take you directly to that particular project. So we'll give you a second to follow on that and head over to the Q&A just to make sure there's no other questions here, which there are some. Video seems to be stuck on one picture rather than seeing the presenters moving around and talking. Am I the only one seeing this? Maybe. Oops. We don't know. For me, it works. Ready to rock. It seems like other people are not having that problem. So presumably it is a local bandwidth issue, and hopefully your Aaron is catching up with us. And thank you to the other people who are answering these questions. That's very helpful. So that if you guys keep an eye on this tab, we can keep an eye on the projects here. So we will head back to the showcase now. So you should be able to see hopefully this ClickOps game. And we will, in fact, go over there and head on into, what'd you say? Yep, I'm gonna just share this. I'm gonna just hopefully share this window so you can see our window of the game. All right, so hopefully you are seeing this prototype by Philippe Baron. So it starts with a document that explains a game that's about training for the 4 basic operations. He talks a little bit about both the technical details of how he did this in 3 days using this prototype, and also about the learning objectives, and also talks about some of the data that's collected in the game. And that's something that we will get to a little bit later in the course. But thinking about how you know whether someone's learning from your game and thinking about the data that you might collect from that is a really interesting challenge, and one that a lot of people are thinking about in the ways that we use games for assessment. Oops, this is not the game. Click on. Here we go. So this is what the game looks like. You get to type in your name. I'm going to be Joe Smith, the default player here, and I'm going to start playing. You'll see that there's a nice to-do at the bottom. There's a nice way to think about as you're developing your own projects, and you start incrementally giving yourself a list of steps you want to go along the way is a great thing to do. So we're here, and the way you basically play this game is there are different operations that are spread around the board, and then there are numbers that you can click on. So the idea is to match those things. So I'm going to click on 4 plus 1, and then I'm going to click on 5, and those match. I'm going to click on 3 plus 7, and then I'm going to click on 2. Oh, those don't match. And then I'll do a correct one. You'll see here that I think these are times it's taking me to solve the different problems that are also here. And we'll keep doing these things. I think it's the time difference between as I click on one thing and then move to click on another thing. It's the time that's spread out in there. So I get a time for number of correct clicks, number of incorrect clicks, the total amount of time that it took me. These are interesting metrics that a teacher might want to know about how long it took somebody to solve these different problems. Go to the next level, and the problems are slightly more difficult, and I won't dive deeper into those because it's more or less the same processes. So some of the nice things I saw here are so obviously the presentation is really nice. The programming is quite smooth, relatively simple, which is fine. In terms of the presentation, thinking about great metrics that you're doing, very concrete goals. Some of the things that we thought about were, are there ways where this could actually be, use the spatial grid in a more interesting way? So we were thinking of games like popular iPhone games and Android games like 2048 and Threes, which are these games where you have these tiles and they move around, they slide into each other, and the idea is they have to, it's all about either powers of 2s or multiples of 3s. And the idea is they need to combine with like kinds and then sort of combine into the next level up. So 2 and 2 will combine with each other and create 4, and then you have to find another 4 to combine with that 4 to create 8. And it seemed like there's an opportunity to turn this, so this is more or less a sort of a flashcard practice in a grid, but it seemed like the grid provided an opportunity to do some interesting things there where you could do some more of this recombination.
Right. I mean, so the next level of this, I think, right, of this style of play is not to just simply perform the operations, but to have people who do the operations perform other activities that sort of show a deeper or sort of higher level understanding of those operations. So, you know, they have to analytically see what's going on the rest of the board first. And also where you just switched to Q&A mode so that, oh, hello, Felipe.
Hello, Felipe, glad you're online.
We're going to go through the questions now in the Q&A. So if you want to flip back over to the Q&A section on your grid, that would be awesome. So you want to...
So Felipe is online. He's one of the people that's currently in the Hangout. Thanks for participating. Yep, those are the time took to solve each op. So he was agreeing with me. I do think that those metrics are really important to think about. You know, both in terms of what you might collect, and I think those are really good ones. You know, number of right, number of wrong, time between each one, as well as total time. And ultimately, if you're giving that back to a teacher, you'd think about what are they interested in. They might not be interested in every time that it took to solve each problem, but they might be interested in the average or the total time. They might be interested in some sort of distribution of that information. So it's a really nice thing to think about in there. And Mandy is agreeing with that the log is a really nice addition to that. How can make our games more sensible in the game development process? Not sure what that one means, Ridvan. Maybe you can think about another way that you could ask that or be a little bit more specific in that. We can try to address that question. Like the player can choose which problem to solve first. That's a great comment. That is nice. Greg O. Thinking about that project, it is nice, but it is an important difference, I think, between that and flashcards, where you're just getting things in order. The ability to sort of have some choice and some autonomy in a game, thinking about those problems you might solve is a really good aspect to think about. So good point there.
Great.
Felipe is contributing back. Eventually, those metrics will be presented to teachers and class. Exactly. All right.
Great. All right. Should we go look at the next?
Back to the showcase. So thanks Felipe for contributing this and for participating online right now. All right. Up next is a math logic game, which I think is the one I was just looking at. In fact.
Yep.
So next one is a math logic game. Does it have a name?
It's called Fractions on the page.
It's called Fractions. And I will now share this to you. Whoops, unshow that item and show this item now. So you should see a link now to the math logic game submitted by Vidaswar. Not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Sorry.
Yeah, we apologize in advance for all the name pronunciations we'll do today.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah. Welcome, Eric.
Sharing this game now. So this is the Fractions game. Made using game blocks, our game blocks here. It's a nice sort of introductory prototype that gives us a sense of what's going on in the game. The idea here is that you need to you have fruit on a tree, and you need to be able to sort them into the correct buckets in order to be able to have the correct ratios that are here. Just pointing out a couple of the sort of technical things here. Obviously, this is the kind of game where you'd want to have many different random levels, progressively getting more difficult. But doing those aspects of the prototype can be very challenging. And in terms of being able to show somebody what the game can do, being able to have one fixed level that shows the processes is a quite reasonable way to start, where you don't necessarily need to think about all the complexity that you would have later on. And I think really thinking about how you scaffold that and how you build a prototype that just sort of shows your idea is a really important aspect without getting too bogged down in some of the other details.
Yeah, I mean, so we love this start here, Vidaswar, and we hope that you would consider, like, instead of making level 2 next, make like level 20 and show us like how this game can get, how this game gets progressively hard, and then you can maybe go back and fill in like level 5 and level 10 and start working that way to show us sort of how the idea gets more and more complicated. Eric is working on the puzzle right now. One other thing that we liked about this game as a possibility is the possibility of using it in a classroom as a multiplayer activity for like the younger age range of the recommended ages for this was like 6 or something like that. And we like the idea of potentially like having even a simple puzzle like this can, if you gather a bunch of students around and then you have to have them discuss or debate like what to do in this situation, that can actually be a really powerful learning opportunity as well. So not every learning game, right, has to be one-to-one, right? You can crowd a bunch of students around the same computer and still have a really powerful, interesting learning experience.
So I can actually reset this one. So just picking up on what Jason was just talking about, so it might be that you have one person who's responsible for the bucket on the left and one person who's responsible for the bucket on the right. And having some negotiation around that becomes an interesting task where we have to figure out, well, don't take that apple. I want to put that apple in my bucket. So that adds a different dimension to the project that doesn't actually. It can be actually true. It doesn't have to be multiplayer where you have built-in multiplayer. It could just be something where you say take turns, and where you have to share the mouse every time you put in an apple or something like that. It could give you a prompt to pass the mouse or something like that. But that's a nice way to sort of add complexity to this. There are a lot of interesting kinds of puzzles you can do around fractions, and I'm going to echo what Jason said around showing level 20, because I think this is a relatively simple level, and I think you can do all sorts of interesting kinds of fractional problems as you get into more advanced levels, thinking about many different buckets that you'd have, things that don't add up to 1, and you're talking about ratios. Maybe there's a narrative that's around here that sort of starts to build in terms of what you're doing with this with these things. So that could help the player or the person who's thinking about this game understand where it's going. And again, that gets back to the point: you don't necessarily need to build all those different levels. You don't need to build them all randomly, but you need to build enough things to sort of show what's the space that this is going to be able to cover. All right, so I will stop over the QA. We're going to stop sharing that. Come back to see our lovely faces, and we're going to pop over to the QA here, see if there's any activity going on there. All right, lots of activity here. I don't know if I'm supposed to stop from the beginning, the top or the bottom. I think I'm supposed to start.
You can do whichever.
So this is getting back. So we're going to go back a little bit here. These couple comments were from the previous project. In addition, if addition, subtraction, multiplication, division were all available at the level of the game, there would be more important decision for the player than just the flashcard answer. Thank you, Marcia. This is going back to the previous one with you had problems on the screen as well as operations on the screen as well as the answers. If you think about it, if you had numbers and you could sort of change what the operation was in there, and you had the answers that were on there, it's a much more complex sort of thinking that you need to do. And I agree that would be an interesting dimension to it, where you maybe have the two numbers, you have 3 and 4, and then you have to choose the operator to put in there, and then match that with an answer. That provides a really rich space to think about, and it provides an interesting problem solving that's going on there. Nice comment, totally. Next one from Tobias says back to Felipe. I hope I have developed my game concept, but I'm struggling with game blocks. Is it possible to partner with someone in the game development process? So absolutely, we can try to help. We've seen this happen already. There are people who have offered help to other people, and we've seen projects improve with the efforts of other people in the class. And we definitely encourage that. I think I mentioned that in this past week's live update. But you should also feel free. We can try to create a forum maybe for people who are looking for that help. There's a general game blocks forum. Yeah, there's a general game blocks help forum, and please feel free to ask for help there. We definitely encourage that, and we can try to point more people in that direction. This is again from the last one. Might be really interesting metric to track which operation causes the players more problems. It's from Mark Smallwood. That's another interesting point in terms of how you might provide interesting feedback and metrics to the teacher. Should we not really need to see feedback on errors in the prototype?
Oh, I think what Mandy's saying here is that the user can see the feedback in Felipe's prototype, and I think it's great to see feedback on errors for users, but how you log that and express that to various audiences is definitely a pretty, it's just a big question. How can you help a viewer, a user, a player understand it, and then what, without possibly sort of psyching them out or getting them in their head, versus what nitty-gritty details might a teacher need to see.
And I'm going to pop up Felipe's answer here also. Also, I'm logging the wrong answer so teachers can find where students are having a hard time to learn. So this is now on the fractions prototype, the Apples game. Great prototype for a game teaching fractions. Would it be better that if a player made a mistake during partitioning of the apples, that the game would automatically reject it, or wait until the player has put on all the apples? And that's a good question. It's thinking about when you give the right feedback. And we were talking about this, I think, yesterday when someone in the lab was actually showing one of the prototypes that we're developing here, actually on fractions, as a matter of fact. I think one of the keys is when you're creating the game, you want to make sure that players can't easily randomly come up with the right answers. So you want to be able to make sure that the player has to actually know what they're doing in order to create the right answer. So if they get the feedback immediately upon putting the apples in the wrong bucket, under some circumstances, you could imagine that someone would just sort of keep putting them in one bucket until they get a rejection, and then they would just put them in the other bucket, and they wouldn't really need to think about the fractions. You can imagine that maybe on an early level, on level 1 or 2, that would be helpful because it gives the player a sense of, here's what you need to do, here's what happens. But then maybe as the player reaches level 3 or 4, you would take that away, and you would say at that point now they need to put all of them in before they get that kind of feedback.
Yep.
So that was on the Apple one. Someone has offered up, Laura has offered up here another prototype that's made in Unity, which doesn't work on Chrome, unfortunately. We can see if we have time to get to that one later. But regardless of other people can, I think they can see these questions, and you can certainly copy and share this as well.
Question,
oops. Here's a question from Evan again. Would using speed as a metric stress out the player in any way? Great prototype, by the way. It's a really good question about speed, and games have taken different perspectives on that, and there's actually some studies on this. One of the things that's shown is that, and I'm gonna make some broad generalizations here, but in general, girls have liked the time pressure games less than boys, and so it does put some pressure. And I think particularly if you're thinking about math games, and that may not be a metric that you want to emphasize, but there's ways of sort of thinking about time as, in this case, there was no time limit necessarily. Time was one metric that was used. You could imagine hiding that from the player. If you wanted to give that information to the teacher, for example, it would give you a sense of how long it was taking people to play. The other thing is some games provide lots of different metrics. So you might have speed and percentage right, and how long your current streak is, and a lot of other kinds of things. And it might be up to the player to decide how much they want to emphasize those. So it's one thing to sort of like have like a countdown clock that starts at 30 seconds. If you don't finish it in 30 seconds, you're done. There's another thing to have your score and your number right in a row and a bunch of other things, and time is one of those. And if a player chooses to value that one, they can. And if they choose not to, that they can leave that alone.
Right.
Was there another one you saw here that we should jump to right away?
No, I think they're starting to. Some of these are. We can maybe come back to them later.
Okay.
A lot of them are kind of out of. I mean, so. Yeah, that's a little advanced.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. All right. We're gonna move on to the next prototype.
Switching back to the showcase here. So we're gonna activate
Crazy Fruit Market.
Perhaps our favorite named game.
Yeah.
So we're gonna pop over to Crazy Fruit Market ourselves. I'm gonna let you play this one because you've played this one before.
All right, so
I'm going to share the screen here. So Crazy Fruit Market is coming up by Jason15. And it's now being shared.
So Crazy Fruit Market is a vocabulary game for English language learners, mostly abroad. And basically the way it works is, so the vocab word appears like it does here: buy pugnacious apples back home. So we go to pick some apples, and we try and find which one looks pugnacious. So I think this one looks pugnacious. Pugnacious means fighty, which is not a word. I'm going to try and maybe provoke this pugnacious apple. You want to fight with me, don't you? Take me home before you beat me first. I'm going to buy this one because I think he's pugnacious. I think I have correct. This is I think there's something really fun about Crazy Fruit Market. It's derived in the design document, which you can see in the in the forums online. It's derived from the angry orange or annoying orange, and it's such a super fun idea to try and sort of make something that's a little bit drill and practice, like, oh, did I just play the whole game
I think
without presenting?
I might need to play it again.
All right, just refresh.
Oh, let us know. I'm going to just pop over the questions real quick. Make sure that, I'm guessing you might not have seen that game being played, so we're going to play another round of it. Just popping over the questions here, sorry.
Can we be in question and showcase at the same time?
Maybe not. Oh, there we go. Okay, maybe you saw it. We're gonna run through it again anyway.
Yep. So we'll try it again. One thing that's great about this prototype as well is that it has sort of procedurally generated content, so it's not the same thing each time. So now we're going to buy mendacious apples. Mendacious apples lie. I'm going to pick this sly-looking one. I'm going to ask it if it's healthy, because that may. Oh yeah. So yeah, I think he's lying here. So we're going to buy this lying apple, which is. I mean, again, I'm just such a big fan of how fun this game is. It's really just, we can pop over the questions. I think we don't need to keep showing. So we're going to pop back over to the Q&A. I think this game is really fun, and we are not brothers.
Thanks.
Yeah. I think it's super fun. Obviously, you can learn vocab by doing things like flashcards or something like this. But I like that even if it's a silly context, that you're situating this problem in a series of interactions and I think the thing to do to make this game even more fun, or perhaps even better learning, is to have some larger next level up problem as well that you're solving. So that you need to learn, you need to buy a series of different apples or something like that. Obviously, this is just prototyping and you're just getting started. But I think if there's a way in which you could do that, that would be really powerful. And the other thing that I would think would be really useful here is, so if you think back to Scott's video where he talks about spelling bees, and he talks about how you get things right or wrong. When I get things right or I get things wrong in Crazy Fruit Market, I don't get feedback as to why. And I think particularly for incorrect ones, it may be really useful to help think through, like, so you didn't get pugnacious right. What are the roots of pugnacious, right? So pugnacious has puge, which is the same as pugilism or pugilist. Probably not pugs the dogs. But you can start to help people think through why their answers are wrong. And that's the sort of feedback that's really important in a learning game, to help people understand not just that they are wrong, but why they are wrong, so that they can develop better strategies and better approaches to the same types of problems you're presenting to them in your game. So that's kind of what I had to say about Crazy Fruit Market. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Nope. There was a question there in terms of what the tools that the person used, and he's online now and says that he used Coco's 2G JavaScript version. And there's a comment here: this game can be used for learning words as much as testing knowledge. So it's a nice job. It's an interesting way of sort of combining some of the basic vocabulary and sort of interesting problem-solving challenges, and thinking about, obviously, the follow-up questions have additional language learning. So nice job there. All right, we're going to pop back over to the showcase. And we'll activate the next one, which is the genetics game.
This is
by Nancy Hyde.
So
is that up here? It's up here already, I think.
Yeah.
Hope this is the new one. Good.
Yeah, you have to start broadcasting it though.
Yep. We will share our screen with you for the genetics game.
So this is the fourth revision of Nancy Hyde's genetics game, and Eric's going to walk you through this. because he's a trained biologist and I am not.
So the objective of this game is to breed a purebred homozygous blue male and a purebred homozygous blue female that will produce a herd of only blue sheep. Use the sheep pens to keep them organized and to get rid of them, drag them to the truck. So we start out with just a homozygous black sheep, the father, and a heterozygous blue-black sheep, who is the mother. And our goal is to get a purebred blue male and a purebred blue female. So we're gonna have them make a baby, and that's a like the father, black. So we're gonna put that one in the truck.
Or you don't need to put them straight to the truck. You can
put them over here. Homozygous black sheep. There we go. We're getting some homozygous black sheep here.
Nancy, I have to say already that so this is a really well designed heterozygous, the second level. This is a really well designed application. It's super fun, and just the whimsy with which you've captured sheep gender with the little top hats and the bows. It's wonderful. It's really wonderful.
So
that's heterozygous. You can put it there.
Heterozygous blue-black sheep.
So you could probably breed these two and start trying to make blue sheep. But,
there we go. We could put this guy over here.
Yeah, so who's homozygous?
We're looking for a homozygous blue male and homozygous blue female.
So you have to move him to the hetero.
Put him over here.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
There it is.
Homozygous blue sheep female. We're getting close. Another female. We'll put them there in there anyway. Oh, we got a.
So we can put those in the victory slots down the bottom.
Blue male. Yay! Check mark. I got it right. Blue female. Yay! Check mark. Congratulations, you won. We won after 13 sheep. So it's an interesting problem-solving space. As you can see, even though I do know genetics, it took me some thought about where I put things, how I think about solving this problem, reading the problem each time, sort of making sure that I knew what the different sort of results I was looking for are. Sort of a nice presentation. Interaction is fairly simple, but gives me the feedback that I need along the way. Allows me to sort of do some experiments. It is telling me how many sheep I created here, so I could have probably done it in fewer if I wanted to challenge myself. But there's not a lot of pressure on me to be able to do it in any particular amount of time or clicks. So it's nice game that sort of targets a concept that I think a lot of students struggle with, and gives them a nice sort of experimental space to think about it in. Yeah. Stop. I think hopefully
coming back to Q&A now. Yeah, one thing, I actually am also a big fan of your revision 3. I don't know if Nancy's watching us, but I'm a big fan of your revision 3, Nancy, where you actually can't tell which ones are heterozygous. I like that a lot because it's sort of, when you meet blue-eyed people, you don't get to like have an obvious marker of whether they're homo or heterozygously blue-eyed. So I liked the fact that like students had to sort of like keep track and mess around. So in some ways, making your game harder is or like less user-friendly immediately can make it more fun. It's harder. It's more true to the problem you're actually trying to represent as well. Do you have questions you want to talk about?
I'm just skimming through here. Someone just is asking, are there any standard drawings, characters, and props that we can follow according to the target age? So GameBlocks does have some characters built in. We tried to make them sort of purposely generic. In a lot of cases, people use, again, for the prototypes at this point, there are different things you can use. Anything from just boxes with words on them. This is an apple. This is a tree. For prototypes, sometimes that works, or simple drawings. I think, in fact, the Apple one, the person had drawn the tree and the doors and stuff themselves. There's lots of open source clip art libraries that you're welcome to use from. I think there's one called Open Clip Art, and there's several others as well, which give you free license to be able to do what you need to with the art for the prototypes. But it's something that, in general, Obviously, as you're play testing, sometimes, particularly in a young audience who can't maybe look past the fact that it's a box that says Apple on it and not an Apple, sometimes that's a challenge. But really simple clip art in those cases can work pretty well.
I think answering this mess from Hemamali Pereira could be interesting.
This one?
Yeah. So this is an interesting comment from Hemamali Pereira. I wish the mechanism was explained to the user clearly so that the user could learn how the breeding happens. So this is an interesting question. Sometimes I think there is absolutely ways in which maybe games, if you're thinking that the only way this person will learn it is if they encounter your game. But there's something to be said for encountering or for having this this sort of setup where there's a little mystery to it. It's the work of the players to figure out how this stuff works, so they can figure it out, and then afterwards, perhaps in a community of learners, like a classroom or even an internet forum, a lowly internet forum such as we use for this class, that you could work together to answer these questions together, right? So talk about what was your experience of solving the puzzle? How do you think it works? And then ask someone else, well, how did you think it worked? And then you have a discussion, and those discussions can be meaningful both as a way to solidify the meaning and the learning for people during the game, but also to sort of assess the learning that people have done in the classes or in the game as well. So checking in with people to see how they're doing on an activity like this.
I'm gonna post a couple of comments here about this. So looks like a really fun genetics prototype. How would the player initially know what homozygous, et cetera, means? Would initial example do the trick? And then Nancy, I think, wrote somewhere in here. I'm going to try to find it, but said something about like, there's different levels that are different. Some of our different prototypes. There we go. I think revision number 4 would be level 1, and revision number 3 would be level 2. So they're building sort of backwards in some of the leveling there.
That's great.
And I think it's because of what's visible. So in the one that we saw, the heterozygote, you can see blue and black, and in the later one, the later level, the heterozygotes and the homozygous dominant seem the same in terms of being visible. But the question, getting then back around to how would the person even know what homozygous means? So there's a couple different ways that one might think about that. So one way to think about that is, well, let's give them a first really simple level where they can just experiment, and they're going to learn what homozygous means through experimentation by trying to get it right and see what happens there. Maybe just like select the homozygous one and make that the parent or something like that. So the idea is sort of start really simple and build it that way. The other thing is that one can think about these games in some sort of context. So maybe this game came along with some explanation of the basic sheep you start out with and what they look like. Maybe it was in a class where you already had some information about that previously. So there's different ways of thinking about that, whether you can make levels really easy and allow people to sort of discover some of those things themselves for the first time, or thinking about the situation that you put it in. And if you want to just sort of include that in some of the description of your game, say, I'm imagining this game is being used in conjunction with a reading or conjunction with a discussion or something like that, allows the person to give it some sort of context. I'm just going to skim here through some of these other questions. Since we're only
the new ones always appear up top, right? Or no, people can upvote.
Yeah, the upvoted ones are at the top. So I'm gonna dismiss some of these that we've already addressed. Could the extension? Okay. Sorry, I'm gonna just.
Oh, that's a cool feedback idea.
Could the stems from the apples removed be left on the trees as a reminder of the original number on the tree? This was back on the fractions game. Nice suggestion. It gives, once you've put the things in the bucket already, it's nice to sort of think about those and see those fractional ratio relationships. So nice. So I'm going to dismiss that one. Talks about crazy fruit market. I found it hard to design context conversations for each word. Also, as you mentioned, how to provide appropriate feedback to the players is also a headache. So challenges in that game, but really nice job on it so far. Let's just take a quick look and see if anything else is coming in there that's important.
I guess since people can upvote, they must be able to see them, so we can just leave them and we'll answer as need be.
We will head on over to the next.
So we're going to look at the next prototype, which is a board game for adult educators by Vladenbadge. Is that what it is?
Vladin ABJ.
Yes, BLADENABJ.
So this is I'm updating the prototype and rules on. So there's a link to updated version. But this is a game for adult educators. What did you say? Okay, I'm going to share this screen here. All right. So this is a game that's for adult educators to think about how they can run their classes and deal with the students in their classes who may be having various issues. So it's a nice sort of teacher training game, specifically in this case for people who are adult educators. I think what we're going to do is share some of the things that are going on in here. So there's a bunch of different documents. So these are sort of the board. These are the board, and they're showing different kinds of parts, I guess, of the environment the person is dealing with, sort of group work, maybe sort of pairwise interactions, computer work. I think they represent different places, maybe in the adult education environment. These prototype play cards are actually some of the most important things. So these are the play cards. So for example, Peter, a participant in your course, just asked you to improve the results score on his course certificate. Amanda, a participant in your course.
Improve, quote, unquote.
Yes, improve the results score, yes. Amanda, a participant in your course, keeps checking her cell phone every couple minutes. Other participants seems to have noticed this too. Peter is repeatedly raising his voice during the team's discussion. So just thinking about different ways that you can handle different kinds of problems in your class. There may not be right answers. I'm assuming in this case here that these are answers that are discussed with your other players in the game to see if you're having a good solution to this problem. And it seems to make sense in these kinds of cases that that it's really about the discussion that is what matters, or having a discussion of this issue, and the game sort of as a context for raising those discussions. Let's see here, game in progress. This another photo, I think, in this case here of the game in progress. You can see different kinds of pieces that are moving around in this game. I don't think we have a set of rules for how they move around yet. I could be mistaken on that. Here's another set of cards. We've divided participants into 4 small teams to work on different chunks of one project. 3 groups have almost finished, but 1 group has made no progress so far. So it's nice here showing about the different kinds of, I think these are the different zones you wind up in. So based on those different parts of the board, sometimes you're dealing with individual students, but sometimes you're dealing with group work. How do you deal with these different kinds of problems? So I think these different kinds of categories of problems and the specifics of what's been chosen here is quite a nice set of constraints and interesting discussion points.
So one thing, part of the reason we wanted to just talk about this is that we're really happy to see a project for the course that is for adult learners, because I think obviously all too often people assume that only young students are the audience for learning games, and I think this is actually a perfect use of a learning game. And so far it looks really interesting. But on the description of the page, I'm just going to call you Vlad for short, and I hope you don't take offense. But on the page, Vlad says things like, "I hope it's fun. I hope it's interesting." And this is a perfect opportunity to go and sort of a nice transition for what we're going to talk about in Unit 4, which is playtesting. It's a really important, especially with paper games or board games sometimes, because they're you have a bunch of people crowded around and dealing with other people. It's easy enough to when you have a simple problem presented to you on a computer, it's just one-to-one. You can sort of get a sense for whether it's fun or not. But something like a board game that requires a lot of people playing together, you really kind of have to road test it. So put it out there and try and play it. Because I'm hoping that maybe you have access to a bunch of people who have to teach adult learners. So I would just start playing this game as quickly as possible, because I think you'll generate, you'll learn whether it's fun, you'll learn what you need to do, and if you have questions, now's the perfect time to bring them back to the forum and say, like, my players didn't think this was very fun. I don't know what to do. We're stuck here, and then you can sort of describe that type of problem perfectly, and we can, both the people in the course and maybe the course staff can give you some feedback to help you out. But it's great to see this type of work going on in the class. We're really happy to see it.
So I think Mandy Honeyman has a comment on this one. This seems to be for a face-to-face situation. If so, it might be necessary to pare it back a bit and simplify so it can be easily communicated at the outset of or inset or something. So the idea is, again, thinking about the context that these games are in, where are they used, how are they used, does the game need to be simplified, or does the context need to be able to sort of foster some of this play? There was another comment that just came in, I think. Great board game prototype with the cards be able to address all possibilities and situations. And that's another way of paring it back, is one might imagine sort of starting with one or two different kinds of categories of things and expanding that out. All right.
They come in order. So.
They appear at the top temporarily before they pop over. All right. We're going to pop over, I think, to the next. It might be the last. Showcase here.
Yep. So we're going to look at another paper prototype, teaching English speakers to learn kanji. I believe. Share the screen again. Yep. The presentation up.
Okay. There we go. All right.
So this obviously has a bunch of, you can just scroll up and down. It's this is a really interesting sort of game for developing sort of an understanding of how to write kanji, and it's developed in a fantastical world and has really, really lovely art, especially the character art. But even if you scroll down a little bit further, there's also some gameplay. This image right here actually, I think, sort of explains kind of the idea of the game pretty nicely in terms of that you're playing what's ostensibly like a quote unquote regular video game, but you have to understand kanji to do it. And so, by drawing the spells correctly, you create the spells you need or attacks you need. And I think this is just a delightful sort of approach. And I understand, particularly in game blocks, we have no ability to do this computer vision. I talked with Paul about it. But the ability to, and maybe this is designed for a DS as well with the two screens. So in this class, it's absolutely viable to, if you have something in your imagination that's really hard to implement, you should absolutely start developing it in public like this. And maybe there's someone else in the class who wants to help develop a game like this.
You can also think about ways of simplifying the actual task to make it appear as if it's doing what it needs to do. So maybe it's a matter of selecting the right character in the first stage, or maybe it's about just simply drawing anything, and it gives a sense of what the character that you would be having to draw the character there. So you can sort of give a sense of either the dynamics of drawing or sort of choosing the correct character, and then it will allow you to be able to give a sense of what's the progression that's going on here, what are the actions you'd be taking, etc.
And also, John, just because you have you don't have implementations, I hope you'll take a page from our last prototype that we reviewed and still try and paper prototype what you can out of this. Just put stuff in front of users and see if it's fun. And you may get a sense of, like Eric was saying, like how you might scale up teaching a kanji, or what kinds of puzzles or spells people find interesting. So even if you can't technically implement something yet, like please feel free to go wild with paper prototyping and just put stuff in front of people, because again, games are, if games are an art, and I'm not gonna get into that because that's a long discussion, but if games are an art, they're an art form that absolutely needs other people in the development process. You really need to play your games with other people in order to get a sense of how fun they are, or if they're going to work, especially when you're starting out. Every year when we teach the on-campus version of this class, someone has the experience of like, I came up with this great game, so there it is. And we have to say, like, well, why don't you play it with other people? And then they play it with other people, and they're like, oh. So no game like Athena springs fully formed from your head. You have to play your games with other people. And so hopefully we'll get to do that, or you'll get to do that, and we'll get to see you do that in Unit 4. Eric is looking through the questions.
Questions here to see if there's anything that's come in. Looks like nothing recent. So we can, I think we'll start heading to wrap up. So this gives you some sense of the kinds of things from what we saw in the later stages, paper prototypes. I think that the first paper prototype, I think, may be something that stays as a board or physical game.
And that's fine.
And that's fine.
That's
so
great.
The later one, I think, is some paper prototypes that's on its way, perhaps, to being a digital game that might be, as depending on the technical limitations, just really be something that's representative. It still might be much more of a representative prototype than a working prototype, which is fine as well. It's a matter of sort of what meets your needs in the context of the course, and in the context of what you'd like to get out of it. For a lot of people, they would like to have some sort of simple digital prototype because they're looking for an opportunity to do that, but it's up to you as to where you get in that space and how far that digital prototype is in terms of functionality.
Maybe we should acknowledge the misconceptions.
Where are we here?
Top above
this
it.
one?
Yeah.
A comment related to Philippe Baron's application: when you get to operations like multiplication and decimal numbers, be sure to include answers that match up with common misconceptions. For example, if you have a 4 times 5, be sure that you have a 9 as an option. So this is from Christine. So the idea is when you're sort of creating these, you want to have interesting wrong answers. So, and the interesting wrong answers both provide a challenge to the students, and they also potentially provide information back to the teacher in terms of what's going on. So if a student does confuse multiplication and addition, then you'll find that if they had the 4 times 5 and they select 9, that's probably what happened. And you can actually sort of even have some logic behind the scenes that's saying, like, okay, I'm going to purposely give the wrong answers that are the addition answer instead of the multiplication answer. I'm going to be able to flag that to the teacher so the teacher knows, hey, this student seems to be confusing multiplication and addition.
Or, maybe if they do it like once or twice, it could just be error. But
right.
If they repeatedly do it, then this may be a real systematic sort of misunderstanding that the player has, and you can address that.
Yep. I'm looking through here to see any last questions.
There's a new one up at the top.
Which one probably sunk.
I think it stayed up at the top somehow.
Did it?
Yeah.
Oh, you can look for professional associations. This is about, I think relating to adult learners. There are professional associations with that. Will there be another course from you guys on edX or MIT professional education? On edX or MIT?
I think on either of those platforms, basically.
About professional education?
No, MIT does the professional education.
I see. So I'll answer the question I think this is asking. So we have one more course that we'll be offering, 113X, it's being called, which is about implementation, integration, and evaluation of educational technology. And that's coming up sometime this summer. The date is still a little bit in flux. Sometime mid to late summer, we'll be offering that. So that'll be the fourth course in the EdTechX sequence.
But so if you're not aware, we also did 2 other courses earlier in the fall, which maybe people can access the archives of.
I think there's some limited access at this point, yes.
So those are 11.126X, which is just a straight up game design class, no educational component. But I think it's definitely relevant to this class. And then also 11.132X, which is more about educational technology in general. And I absolutely think there's content in that class that's relevant if you're interested in following up there as well.
So nice. People are appreciating the projects getting called out, and we thank you for submitting them and allowing us to discuss them. And Mandy Honeyman is complimenting the RPG game design. Wants to play it as well.
Yeah, this has been really fun. Both looking through your games and then doing this hangout on air with you. It's been really fun to see your commentary. I wish we could address every comment that we had, but I'm glad you're able to see them and read those. Eric's going to answer this question here.
And the answer there is maybe. So will you offer the old classes again? So we're hoping to be able to offer 11.132, the course on design and development of educational technology, and we'll see if we can run that again in the fall. We're hoping to, but we have to see if we have the resources to be able to do that. So I think we are now out of time, unfortunately. Sorry, Laura, we didn't get a chance to look at your game. We'll be doing other sort of live events, and maybe there'll be a chance to take a look at it there. So thanks all of you for joining us, and we'll see you online.
Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks.
Thanks.